The dominant threat vector is not a missile launch. That is 20th century logic, a high-cost, low-probability event designed for public consumption. You have been conditioned to watch the skies for a kinetic strike. This is a strategic misdirection. The first phase of 21st century state conflict will not be heard. It will be an attack on the nervous system of global finance and military command, a systemic silent vector. The primary targets are subsea fiber optic cables and satellite uplinks. Severing these data arteries does not merely disrupt markets. It initiates a global solvency crisis by making assets unverifiable. It blinds the entire Western security apparatus, erasing satellite intelligence and drone control feeds in milliseconds. This protocol is designed to create one thing: the blind Leviathan. A superpower with its launch-on warning system still active, but its sensory inputs, its eyes and ears, are now severed. Its strength becomes its greatest liability. A state-facing engineered economic collapse, following the blueprint used against nations like Venezuela, has no mathematical incentive to surrender. Its only logical asymmetric response is to trigger this blindness. The kinetic cost is near zero. The effect is a systemic contagion designed to shatter the attacker's own system from within. This is the new vector for nuclear escalation. The war in Ukraine is not a conflict over territory. It is a solvency event. The core objective is to push the Russian state into mathematical bankruptcy, a condition where its domestic liabilities exceed its strategic assets, forcing a collapse. CSIS analysis frames the war itself as the Kremlin's single greatest domestic liability. An unpopular high-attrition conflict is a kinetic cost that drains national liquidity and erodes state control. It is an accelerant for internal decay, a balance sheet entry written in blood and treasure. The state's solvency hinges on a single vector: energy revenue. The blueprint for its economic destruction is public knowledge. As analysts at Euromaidan Press confirm, a strategic shock, such as a regime collapse in Iran, would crash oil prices and systemically gut Russia's war funding. This model is not theoretical. We have the data. Vintage records show Venezuela before its economic collapse, when immense oil wealth made it one of the world's richest nations. Its engineered failure is the precise blueprint for how a modern petrostate is dismantled. A state facing engineered insolvency does not capitulate. It pivots. When conventional options are exhausted, the only logical protocol is asymmetric escalation. The objective transforms. It is no longer to win, but to make your own collapse a systemic contagion for the attacker. The new targets are not military formations. They are the attacker's core financial and alliance structures, like the North Atlantic Treaty itself. The goal is to trigger a liquidity crisis or a political fracture within the opposing coalition, making the cost of your failure unbearable for them. Calculated weakness, not strength, is now the primary vector for nuclear risk. Pushing a nuclear state into a solvency crisis creates a mathematical certainty of a launch-on warning protocol. The deployment of U.S. air defense cells to bases like those in Qatar is not a projection of power. It is an admission of this asymmetric threat. The kinetic cost equation has inverted. According to a RUSI analysis, a main battle tank represents a $5 million capital investment. On the modern battlefield, it is a $5 million liability. The new vector for lethality is a $500 first-person view drone, often assembled from commercially available parts. The math is irrefutable. This is the democratization of violence. It is not a political term. It is an economic one. It signifies the systemic collapse in the capital required to project catastrophic force. A state pushed toward an engineered economic collapse, mirroring the trajectory seen in nations like Venezuela, loses the solvency for a conventional force structure. It does not, however, lose the capacity for lethality. Instead, its only logical protocol is asymmetric escalation. A swarm of these drones, costing less than a single tank, can threaten multi-trillion-dollar energy infrastructure or disable a naval carrier group. The objective shifts from winning on the battlefield to inflicting an unacceptable economic and political cost on the attacker, shattering their alliance structures, like NATO, and triggering a systemic crisis in their own financial markets. This is the blueprint for transforming a state's insolvency into a global contagion. The regional instability you are being shown is a deliberate misdirection. These are not the sources of systemic risk. They are the designated laboratories, gray zones, where the protocols of engineered state failure are tested and refined. The objective is not to control these regions, but to observe the mechanics of their collapse. The blueprint for this doctrine was perfected in South America. According to historical data, Venezuela was once among the world's richest nations, built on oil wealth. Its controlled demolition into a solvency crisis serves as the primary case study, a template for transforming a resource-rich asset into a failed state liability. This template is now being staged for its next application. Analysts at Euro-Maiden Press confirm the protocol. An engineered collapse of Iran is designed not for regime change, but to trigger a systemic shock by crashing global oil prices. The primary target is not Tehran. It is the solvency of its allies, specifically Russia's war funding. To ensure this economic collapse becomes kinetic, a calculated liability has been positioned. The recent U.S. deployment of a new air defense cell in Qatar, a base Iran has already targeted, is not a defensive posture. It is a tripwire. According to Fox News, this places a high-value American asset directly in the blast radius, creating a mathematical certainty of escalation upon launch. The final gray zone test operates on the alliance level. Strategic papers, such as those analyzed by Just Security, explore extreme edge cases, even the unthinkable scenario of a U.S. kinetic action against a NATO ally. This is not a war plan. It is a solvency test of the treaty itself, designed to calculate the breaking point of the Western alliance structure under maximum duress. These gray zones, Venezuela, Iran, even the legal framework of NATO, are not zones of conflict. They are staging areas. The regional fires are the symptoms, designed to draw your attention. The real operation is the prepositioning of economic and kinetic tripwires, ensuring that when the next state is pushed into failure, its collapse becomes a systemic contagion by design. The launch-on-warning doctrine is a relic of Cold War logic. If early warning systems detect an incoming nuclear salvo, a retaliatory strike is launched immediately. There is no time to wait for detonation confirmation. The entire protocol hinges on the absolute integrity of that incoming data. This protocol is now the primary vector for systemic risk. Analysts at CSIS identify this as the fog of digital war. A hostile cyber attack does not need to fire a missile. It only needs to blind the radar. When a commander's screen goes from total situational awareness to black, the launch protocol offers no alternative. Is it a system error, or is it the signal that your early warning assets have just been kinetically destroyed? The absence of data forces a binary choice. It compels the commander to assume a decapitation strike is underway and initiate the launch sequence out of pure, logical fear. This transforms a digital attack into a mathematical certainty of kinetic and potentially nuclear escalation. A state does not require strength to initiate a systemic crisis. It requires calculated weakness. The protocol for a cornered petrostate facing engineered economic collapse is not surrender. It is to transform its insolvency into a kinetic contagion vector for the attacker. This is not a theory. It is a mathematical certainty. The trigger mechanism is established. Analysts at RUSI and CSIS have modeled the scenario. An engineered regime collapse in a state like Iran would crash global oil prices, directly undermining the war-funding capabilities of other major energy producers. The blueprint for this type of economic implosion, seen in states like Venezuela, confirms that the terminal phase is not stability, but desperation. A direct kinetic strike on a hardened asset, such as the U.S. Air Defense Operations Cell in Qatar, carries too high a cost of attribution. The logical escalation is asymmetric. Therefore, the calibration shot is predictable. Within the next 12 months, anticipate a catastrophic, attribution impossible digital blackout of a major commercial port or LNG terminal in the Persian Gulf. It will be framed as a cascading software failure, but its function is to be a non-kinetic demonstration of launch-on-warning capability. A signal that the financial and alliance structures of the attacker can be targeted with systemic precision.